Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Doug Grant, one of the partners at Insurance-Canada.ca. Welcome to another Technology in Action webinar entitled How to Bring the Human Connection to Digital Insurance. I personally have always been a strong believer that people innovate and technology is merely a tool. It enables. We have seen insurance people across the industry taking advantage of the ever-developing stream of richer, better, faster developments in technology for a long time. People have found opportunities to improve all aspects of the insurance business, from marketing and distribution, through underwriting, to claims and reinsurance. And of course, don't forget all aspects of product development as well. Some broader potential changes to the business of insurance that are emerging include marketplaces, ecosystems, insurance on demand, embedded insurance, and numerous others. But central to each of these is a focus on the customer, with an improved user experience leading to more new customers and loyalty. On our agenda today, sorry, just a moment here. That would help. On our agenda today, I will run through some administrivia and introduce the speakers. Following the presentation and demo, there will be a question and answer period and a wrap. But before we dive in and introduce our speakers, a few administrative details. As you are listening, should you have any questions you should like to address to our speakers, please enter them into the questions or Q&A box on the control panel. If you have any technical queries about the operation of the webinar, put that into chat, please. Following the presentations, I will present the questions that you have asked to the presenters. We are recording the webinar, and we will send out a note to each of you with a link to the recording in the next day or so. Now let me introduce our speakers. Mary Ellen Power is Vice President of Marketing at OneSpan. She has spoken at several Insurance Canada events in the past, both live and virtual. She always has lots of interesting insights, so I look forward to the presentation. Mary Ellen will turn the session over to Patrick Elbert, who is a Senior Solution Architect at OneSpan. He will share an example of technology in action, a human-digital hybrid model, which is an important combination for replicating the in-person experience. So let's get right to it. Mary Ellen, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I will stop sharing at this point.
Sorry there, Doug. I apologize. I'm just changing around. Do you see the full screen?
Yes.
Terrific. I'm sorry. There was a little bit of an echo there, so I put myself on mute for folks. Fantastic. Thank you for the introduction. So we're going to discuss how things are evolving, especially here in the digital side, insurance industry. Excuse me. And specifically, where does digital and human interactions intersect? Excuse me. So we're going to kind of unpack this just over the next 40 minutes, myself and Pat. And, what I kind of want to bring everybody's attention to is with the pandemic, online and mobile channels have really become priority for every insurance organization, regardless of whether you're a carrier, broker dealer, or an agent. And kind of how we've maintained our business continuity and how we've serviced customers through this pandemic has really been through the online and mobile channel. And they're no longer just for self-service. What they do is they very much underpin the human-led channels, which include our call centers, our broker dealers, our financial agents and advisors. So what we're going to do is we're really going to try to address when is the human touch a must, and what is that role for these human-assisted use cases that are going to be underpinned by digital technology. So we're going to unpack a little bit around behaviors, new and emerging behaviors in this remote world, some great research from Forrester. We're going to talk a little bit about, which use cases really do require that human assistance. We are going to ask you for your involvement in one short poll, and then we're going to get into what does that human digital experience look like. And Pat will take over, and then we'll just tie up with a little bit around, what's the opportunity for insurance when we're looking at our advisor and agents. And it really is an opportunity to kind of get ahead of other financial services sectors, which is a real first for insurance. So let's look at the Forrester research. And what Forrester has been doing is they've been tracking digital engagement in insurance customers for a number of years. And they've been highlighting where the adoption is really taking place in that kind of customer life cycle. So the first thing I'd like to do is just draw your attention to the top statistic here. Globally, 83% of really personal lines is going to be digitally influenced this year, with some impact on commercial as well. So that's pretty impressive. We've always known that personal and commercial insurance is one where we've seen high use of both online and mobile channels. So if I bring your attention just to the first stat, in the US today, we have not only personal lines, but we've got a really significant influence coming with life insurance. And I know we've got both property and casualty and life insurance providers on the phone today. So where property and casualty has been adopting and incorporating digital technology for more than probably 15 years, life insurance was a little slower in the US, whereas in Canada, it's much further ahead. What's encouraging here is we're now seeing, even in the research phase, that almost 3/4 of people are actually doing research online before they decide to buy life insurance. The other country that is really ahead when it comes to using online channels is the United Kingdom. So if anybody follows the UK, what you see is a significant percentage of people using comparison sites to make pretty sophisticated decisions. As well, we also see in the United Kingdom a really significant percentage of insurance that's actually purchased online. And this isn't just general insurance or property and casualty. It also includes over 50% of life insurance today is purchased online in the United Kingdom. And then if we just go to the bottom of the chart of the slide, what you also see here is buyers and existing customers in the US now actively signing up for notifications, push notifications and texts. We're seeing in Italy this year the use of chat to really engage with their buyers and their customers. And then in Canada, because this is a Canadian audience, we're seeing the use of cameras, specifically on smartphones, to actually get insurance quotes and to be able to submit a claim. So kind of what you're seeing in this slide is that each country has its own regional preferences. But what we're seeing is that these metrics are really an indication that customers are using digital technology, and they're using it at various stages in the life cycle. And so that's really encouraging for insurance. Now for Canada, these numbers are really interesting. You can see here that this is just Canadian specific. So what happened during COVID? What we've seen in COVID is what we're calling first-time digital users. And that's interesting because when we look at many people, we saw for the first time using their computer to actually access their insurance accounts. So that's a pretty good percentage. And when we go on to thinking about claims specifically, it's already a pretty automated process, but you also had people who were not submitting claims electronically. I was kind of happy to hear this because I have a husband who's works for a large airline manufacturer in Canada, but has never used online claims until COVID. So I felt kind of alone. So this was good to see that 6%. And then the last part is actually new first-time users purchasing a financial product online. So this was great. And what we've seen is COVID's pretty much been the catalyst to creating these new consumer behaviors, and is really the main driver for so many people to finally start using online channels and mobile channels, really for first use cases. So with everybody working virtually for the past, let's say, 18 months, it's not surprising that the insurance industry has really experienced a boost in digital interactions. And what I wanted to do was just highlight a few really unique use cases, some US and some Canadian, but some interesting technologies here. So Guardian, if anybody who's aware of Guardian, big life insurance carrier in the United States, and they started to use video and chat technology. I think what's great is, although that might not seem really innovative, what it did is it gave them a chance to have a much higher touch point with their audience, their customers. And what we're seeing here is that it was pretty well received. They doubled the usage of video and chat during COVID. Now, Haven Life, this is Mass Mutual, another life insurance carrier in the United States. This is their digital brand. And what was interesting here is they saw a 34% increase in the amount of new business. So life insurance closed online, during Q2 and Q3. That's a nice uptick when you're looking to bring on net new customers. Now, Sun Life recently shared in a kind of fireside chat where they went paperless in 72 hours when their employees literally had to all move and work remotely from home. So they had to enable about 4,000 agents to e-sign new business policies, and honestly, any other document that required an e-signature, they were in a position to be able to enable that. What's kind of neat, though, is what Sun Life shared in that fireside chat is the RRSP season was just completing when we did that. And they shared that they had done basically 60% of their annual volume during those 60 days. And that was because they could do that completely electronically with the use of e-signatures. And they also shared that they'd seen a 40% reduction in processing time. So really fantastic use case there in Canada. Now, the two Great West examples, what I like about the one here on the left-hand side is this is the introduction of a hybrid wealth manager. So going past the robo-advisors, which is just using technology, to incorporating the ability to blend in also the ability to access a human for advice. So this is a really nice use case, one we'll touch on a little bit later in the webcast. And then the other one is like Haven Life, Great West also saw adoption for new business with their Simple Protect tool, which allowed them to be able to basically accept online applications. And then the last example here is also a Canadian example. This is Munich Re, the Canadian division. And what they basically did is they were launching their new digital platform right when COVID started in March. And they focused on voluntary benefits. They launched a digital platform that would enable term life up to 250,000 and critical illness up to 100,000. This platform handled everything from when you would select, apply, buy, bind, and deliver a policy in 15 minutes. So really transformational based on that experience, but even more so, this is a new business model that Munich Re is enabling their affiliates, their broker dealers who can white label this and basically offer it to their customers. So some really cool ways in which insurance carriers have been really leveraging, digital technology to improve that engagement and to really transform the way they're working, with their own customers. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to also share what's been happening on what we'll call the fintech side of insurance. This is another area that's really grown over the last year. So what you see here is basically a 60% increase in funding in 2020. And what that is showing is that, from that digital boost we're getting with consumers wanting to use these channels is a whole onslaught of new logos, new types of businesses, as well as very large brands like Salesforce bringing forward, Velocity, where they acquired this company. And it's an app-based platform. And so for verticals like insurance, they have an app just for insurance. So what you're seeing here is lots of innovation, lots of, injection with ideas and technologies that are really helping to close these gaps that have existed for some time. So this digital boost we're experiencing, we think this is going to go on for some time. Now, I guess as the insurance industry is accelerating its pace of digital transformation, the one thing that we still must keep in mind is that insurance is a trust product, right? This isn't something that, people go out and they just make a sort of impromptu purchase. It's really something that you research and that you buy. So when we're thinking about our own, organizations, whether you're a carrier or a broker dealer, we really need to keep in mind that although our customers want better service, they want that convenience, they want that modern experience, they still wish to interact with humans. They still want the advice and the consultation that comes with so many of our insurance and investment products that are more complicated. So we've got to keep this front and center as we bring in these digital technology platforms. How do we do this in a way that makes sure that our kind of trusted advisor role still stays front and center? And that's kind of what, we're really going to talk about today. So as I attempted to look at, when the human touch is a must, what I did is I sort of broke it out using channel. And if I can draw your attention to the left-hand side of this slide, what I first looked at was what are the use cases today that are mainly online, mainly self-service. And, it's pretty easy. Research today, whether that's property and casualty, or that's life, or annuities, or disability, you can do your own research. And that's what the stats showed us. Customers are conducting that on their own. When you get to endorsements and renewals, unless there's really a change in the policy, that also can be done pretty much as a self-service transaction as well. For new policy applications, this is where we see definitely auto insurance. Pretty much in the United States, more than 3/4 of that is done completely through online and mobile channels. In Canada, I think it also has a reasonably high adoption to be executed digitally. However, on the life side, there's really only a small number of life products that you can do end-to-end digitally. Term life is one of them. And then claim submissions, it's pretty much all automated. And then customer service, we're starting to see more technology come in to really aid that channel. So do we need humans here? There's value there, but this is something that we know can be done in a significantly self-service way. On the right-hand side, though, as you start to bring in use cases where the agent, the financial advisor, the call center rep really has a role, this is every time you have a use case where you're looking for advice. So think about home insurance. It could be done online, but for many people, there's often, exceptions that they want covered. For specialty products, recreational vehicles, think of specialty products like jewelry coverage. That also is often going to be a conversation. For commercial insurance, almost completely sold by agents and advisors. Life and disability gets even more complicated. Again, it's going to be an agent or advisor. And then investments and securities are always going to be done, at the agent advisor level, if you're buying a fairly high value transaction. And then lastly, if you've got to go to a resolution and settle something in the claims process, then you're going to require some interaction and ultimately a signed document. So the right-hand side, this is where we see the challenge really going forward in the virtual world, because this has changed for us. We know that we still want to keep that interaction, but much has changed in doing that face-to-face. So what's happening is it's really been kind of what we've been dealing with over the last 18 months. How do you give that white glove experience that you would normally do when you can sit across from your client? How do you do that in a way that, you can do this in the virtual world and get through the conversation, provide clarity, make sure that you're not, missing information that you should be collecting, or that you also just incorrectly put something down. This is what our industry has been wanting, the same competitive edge that the online and self-service channels have, now in an assisted way for the agent channel. Okay, so what we're going to do is, just before we get into what does that look like, we're going to ask you for a little bit of participation. So if you've been doing double duty and listening, I'm going to ask you to just take 60 seconds and really help give us kind of where your organization is today. So shall we bring up the poll? Perfect. All right. So we've got one question, and we're asking you to just really select one of these 5 options. So during COVID, did it impact your agent advisor related initiatives? And really the question is how did that impact it? Did you end up shifting resources and investments to the digital world? Is that what you did, throughout the pandemic? Did you end up closing any branches or agencies during the pandemic? We talked with a lot of our customers. We saw very few of that, but then maybe that affected you more than others. Did you end up investing in really trying to transform this agent advisor experience, which is what we're talking about today? Are you considering launching a virtual branch or agency? Have you started thinking about that? Lots of conversations around that we've been having with our clients. Or did you just go unfazed and it just did not have any impact on your branch or agency initiatives? Okay, so we've got lots to cover. So we're going to close that poll out and hopefully share the results. Okay, all righty. So lots of shifting, of course, and that's so expected, right? This is exactly what COVID has done. It's kind of catapulted the insurance industry into rethinking our digital transformation priorities. Good to see. Hardly anybody had to close any agencies or branches. And I'll say I've talked to a lot of our customers in Canada and the US, and that's really what I've heard across all of those conversations. Very few people had that impact. And then, investing in transforming this agent advisory use case, this is great to hear, because this is what we're also starting to have some really good discussions with our customers. Considering launching a virtual branch. Okay, we've got an absolute 0 there. All right, not surprised. We are seeing that in the banking industry, which tends to be ahead of us. So there's still an opportunity for us to consider that. And then no impact, very few. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you. All right, so let's go on. So let's turn and really, kind of look at, oh, here we go. I'll just get that back. Control back. Thank you. There we go. All right. So what we really want to talk about here is shifting our thinking away from this concept of humans versus digital. And I feel like today it's rarely that conversation. I think everybody realizes it's not one or the other, but that you can really, interlace human and digital together in a way that can solve our insurance customer problems. So with what we just talked about, trust being really a foundational element to the success of our insurance industry, that's what we want to do. We want to blend this human and digital experience, but really only where it makes sense. And that's what we're going to talk about. There are just certain use cases where this is really top of mind. And that's the more complex, high value transactions where you want to inject that human element and you still want the benefits of that digital experience. Okay, So as we kind of turn to the remote world that we've really all been living in for the past 18 months, what's the common denominator here on the left-hand side with these use cases? The common denominator is that these are all human-assisted agreements, and that's kind of what's coming out in this discussion. It's mediated by an advisor or agent or a call center rep. It's taking place in the remote world. So either your customer and your advisor or agent are both at home, or you've got one that's at home. And so this is kind of what's come together. In order to really make these human assisted agreements happen in a virtual world, you need a couple of things that must come together as technology. You need to be able to ensure everybody's got the secure access that are participating in that transaction. You need to make sure that those communications are happening in real time as you're going through the actual documents. You need to be able to do this in a way that all parties can review, and you can pass control from your applicant back to the agent. And then you need to be able to keep that electronic, so you need the e-signature, and then of course the electronic evidence for compliance and regulations. So let's just take a quick look at kind of what that looks like, and then I'll be passing this over to Pat in just a few minutes. So this is really a new frontier for our agents and our financial advisors. It's an opportunity for the insurance industry to really surpass other industries out there. And if we look at the things we need, there's really four. We need the video-enabled communications. And the reason for that is we're trying to mimic as closely as possible this face-to-face environment that you would normally have if you were an agent sitting with your customer, right? You want that human touch, and you want an opportunity to develop those relationships. The other thing you need is you need to make sure that you've got strong identity verification and authentication. Because if you don't know exactly who you're transacting with, that's an issue. And you've got to make sure that all participants are who they claim to be. So this is really important in the remote world, and I'll share some interesting research about what's happening in insurance related to identity theft. And then here on the lower left-hand corner, this is where you need the rich collaboration features. Lots of people, like today, we're using Zoom, but what you really want is the real-time review so that you can go through the contract, you can talk about the terms and conditions, and you can really make sure that you're capturing all the information you need in a single session, right? You're giving yourself the best chance of really achieving, that sale. And then lastly, you need the e-signatures and the evidence to make sure that you can keep that electronic, that it's a legally binding agreement. And at the end of the day, it satisfies your legal and compliance team. Okay, so last few things before I hand this to Pat for the demo. One of the questions that we've been getting constantly around remote use cases is, how do I verify the identity of the customers, right, that I've got in this virtual environment? And this is a pretty legit question. Unfortunately, if you've been tracking the news, fraudsters are really taking advantage of the remote world that we live in, whether that's in banking or in insurance or lending, and they're impersonating customers. So sometimes that happens in a net new application. It also happens with existing accounts where they just take over and then they commit fraud. So what the pandemic has really forced insurance carriers and broker dealers to do is to consider implementing higher levels of identity insurance. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. But the reason that this is happening is because we are in this remote world. However, over here on the left-hand side, for anything that's been happening with electronic signatures for the past, 15, 20 years in the insurance market, we've always been incorporating some level of, authentication. But now that so much is happening in your remote world, what we're really asking is that you reconsider upping the level of authentication, enhancing that. And if you're not doing, then you really need to add some level of signer authentication to your external and your remote e-signature use cases. So this is the most recent statistic that has come out in the last 60 days from ITAE. They did a really in-depth study on identity theft and insurance. And I think I don't know if we're offering this for free or not, but anyway, reach out to me afterwards. I'm just bringing up one statistic here to show you across all types of insurance, 27% of the consumers that were surveyed had their identity stolen. So it's not just happening to one type, it's happening to many types of insurance. So the question is, then how do you determine, right, the type of identity insurance that you could be adding to the insurance use case that you're looking at? And it really is sort of a balancing act. What you end up doing is you end up looking at the customer experience and the security that you're thinking of using, and you sort of apply that to the risk of the transaction. So what we're really saying here is look around, really look at these variations that you have. Obviously, the higher we go up, the more complex and the more friction is involved in that identity verification process. At the same time, you really should be considering, this as you think about the value of that transaction. The higher risk, higher value, more complex transactions, you definitely want to do something, more than SMS or a shared secret. You probably want to look at something like a government issued identity, ID here. So very quickly, just to show you how incredibly, easy this is, it ends up giving you an enhanced or higher level of identity insurance when you're using a government issued ID. It could be a passport, it could be your driver's license, it could be your health card. And yet it is incredibly easy for a customer to use. So what you end up doing is you basically end up taking a photo of the ID here, and you end up running it through a couple of forensic checks. It's happening in real time, and it's just ensuring that this ID is authentic. Basically uses facial biometrics. It's going to compare the photo that's from this ID to a selfie of the customer. And when you're using facial biometrics, what you need to make sure is that it can detect spoofing. So the applicant is just going to be asked to turn their head, smile, blink their eyes. This is the liveness detection that you're going to be able to really pair when you're using a biometrics, facial biometrics capability. And that will make sure that that person is really present during the transaction. So this is pretty simple. And you want to make sure the identity verification happens before you pass off the customer to do the signing. Okay, so I'm going to hand this over to Pat, and Pat's going to bring the virtual room up, and we're going to show you what does this really look like if you've got a financial or advisor or an agent. Now, Pat, I don't know if you wanted to also do a quick run through on one slide before you bring the virtual room up, or did you want to launch into the virtual room right away?
Let's just launch into the virtual room just to make sure we have enough time at the end to cover and answer all of the questions that we might get.
Sure. Alrighty. So I'll stop sharing and let you take it over from here.
Perfect. Yeah, and if we do have time afterwards, if there's not enough questions, we can go back through and kind of reanalyze and maybe recap using a PowerPoint slide. So for the audience today, I just want to run through what my demonstration is going to cover. I do have a document on my desktop that I prepared ahead of time. I'm going to play the role of an agent that is putting together an application policy, and Mary Ellen is going to be my applicant. So I'm going to show you how to, first off, create the transaction inside of OneSpan Sign, some of the options that you have available to you. And then we'll go through the actual signing ceremony, and we'll show you how the assisted signing would look. We'll also revisit the completed document at the end and show you the audit trail, just so that you can prove compliance after you're finished. So I'm going to start with my web browser, and I'm going to simply log in as an agent, and I'm going to create a transaction. I'm going to upload that PDF document that we saw prior. Now, keep in mind, if you have systems that produce a document, To save you a step, you could actually use a print driver. So instead of printing that to a PDF, you could print it directly to OneSpan Sign and upload that print stream, and it would automatically create a PDF inside of the service. So the only thing that is really required on the first screen is to give the transaction a name. And I like to include the applicant's name as well, just so that I can search and find this easily in the future. Now, this platform allows you basically to use this product for all of the different use cases, whether it's a simple remote signing that is unassisted, or in person, as well as a virtual room. So I'm going to select a virtual room that allows me again to do the assisted signing. And it's going to take me to a screen that allows me to upload the document or the application that I put together. You'll notice that there is one document out here already, which is my e-sign consent form. Now, different territories, different provinces have different requirements, different states in the United States have different rules around this. I could preview this. I'm going to simply remove it. My account is configured to automatically add that to every transaction. It is a configuration setting. If your province does not require that, you can simply have your account configured not to include that. Now I can simply click the button to add, and I can add multiple documents to the transaction. Once I've uploaded it, it is a good idea, of course, if you're uploading it the way I just did, is to make sure that it is the correct document. So when I pop this thing open, I can see that it has been pre-filled. This is the one I was preparing for Mary Ellen ahead of time. Now I also have to add my recipients, who's going to sign the document. Of course, Mary Ellen is going to be my first signer. So you can see I've already added her before. So it remembers that I've included her. So the only pieces of required data is her first name, last name, and email address. Title and company is only required if you want to pre-fill signature blocks using that type of data. Now, as Mary Ellen was talking about earlier, we could also include authentication by going into the settings category. And there's different types. If you want to use an SMS text message that's going to contain a 6-digit PIN, that can be sent at the time of signing. You're not going to see Mary Ellen's point of view. You're actually going to see just my screen. So we're not going to include one today for simplicity's sake. Now I can also add the agent. So if I'm not the agent, if there's somebody else that's going to do that, I can simply type in their name and indicate that they are the host for the virtual room. So I just simply added myself. I indicated that I am going to be the host. And also down at the bottom, I can indicate what is the date and time that we're going to have this session. Me as an agent, I might have taken Mary Ellen's information and compiled the application offline with, after I've had an initial conversation with her. Now that I have this together, I can say, well, let's schedule a time that we can get together, maybe tomorrow at 1300 hours. So I can select the hours, I can select the minutes, I can select the date. I can also enable video. So if we want to see each other as we're going through this, I can toggle that back on as well. Now that I've configured that, the last thing I have to do before I activate this transaction is to indicate where the signers need to sign the document. And we have a signature placement tool that allows me to click on a page on the right-hand panel that takes me right down to the very last page of the document, and I can drag and drop signature locations using this tool. So I simply click on a person's name, such as me, the agent, and say the agent is going to sign here. Mary Ellen is going to sign up above. Now these fields can be resized, of course, to fit your document. It doesn't have to be done, but it certainly can be if you want things to look nice. Now that we're finished, I can send this to sign, and this is going to activate this. And by me doing this, it's going to send an email over to Mary Ellen that's going to include the ability for her to add this to her Outlook calendar. Since I scheduled this for 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the 18th, it's going to be basically sitting in my inbox until that time occurs. And then of course, it's going to pop up a reminder for me. Now, should Mary Ellen call me up and say, you know what, I've got to leave on vacation, let's do this ahead of time. Me as the agent, I can go back into this dashboard and click on this, and I can actually start the signing ceremony ahead of time. So a couple things I need to do. Of course, it's telling me that I need to agree to the cookie policy, and it's telling me that my microphone is not shareable right now because I'm using it in the Zoom meeting as well. But I can share my camera. Hi, everybody. So now you can see me, and what I'm doing now is activating the meeting room. So when I do this, I'm going to sit here into a waiting room and wait for Mary Ellen to join. So I can see that I've got a little green dot next to my name, which means I'm here. Mary Ellen is not. So Mary Ellen, there you go. I was going to ask you if you could click on that email to join the party. So now that she's here, I can start the transaction. And what you're going to see is the signing ceremony, and I am on the right-hand side as well as Mary Ellen. So we can see each other, we can communicate. And the page that's you're viewing on the left-hand side is something that is shared. So we're sharing the signing ceremony together. So there's certain things I can point out. I can say that the meeting has started. You can see we have one document that needs to be signed, which is up above here. We have one call to action. So when I click the button to start signing, it's going to take us and allow us to start viewing the application. So at this point, I could review this with Mary Ellen. I could point out certain things on here, saying that there's a section inside of here that I want you to pay attention to. Did I capture all of the information correctly? I can scroll through, and she can see everything that I can see. Now, when I get down to the bottom of the document, my signature queue is enabled, but Mary Ellen does not have the control to click on that on my behalf. If she moves her mouse over there, you can see that she's actually moving things around, but she cannot click on the sign button. I can sign it. Once I do that and I confirm, signing is complete for myself. Now on the right-hand panel, I can allow Mary Ellen to take control of the keyboard. So if I click on the little mouse, it's going to verify that I want to grant keyboard control. Now it's going to repaint the screen and reload that document. And now her signature queue is going to be enabled.
Terrific. So if I'm the applicant today, I'm in a position where now I have control of the document. And even though Pat and I may have discussed it in advance, I might want to review it. Maybe there's something I want to ask him specifically for his attention to, et cetera, terms and conditions. And here I am, I'm scrolling down. I'm like, okay, I'm pretty comfortable here. I think I'll go ahead and sign.
And there are other things I can do as well, since we're both sharing this. There's a little time-saving tip. If she didn't want to scroll through the whole document, I can circle certain things, saying, there's a little section right here that you can click on to take you right down to the signature field. And once you're finished, there's a confirm box at the bottom that you have to click on to complete. So it allows us, to highlight certain things and to go through and again make sure everybody's comfortable with the document. And now that she's completed, that is the only document we had. Otherwise, we would continue with one document after another until the entire signing ceremony, until every document that was uploaded has been signed completely. So I could have, again, 5, 6 different documents. We can also ask Mary Ellen to upload supporting documents during the signing process. So if we wanted to ask her for a proof of medical insurance or proof of, a driver's license, anything like that, we could ask that during the signing ceremony. But now that we're finished, we could kind of wrap things up. I would tell thank you for your time. Enjoy your vacation. I'm glad we could get this done early. And with that being said, I can exit signing mode on the right-hand side, and that's going to end the meeting for Mary Ellen. Now it's taken me back into my dashboard. So this is kind of where I started this process from. So when I was on the dashboard, I created the transaction. Now I'm inside of here and I can see that the status is now set to completed. And this allows me to download the completed document. Mary Ellen, on the other hand, has been sent an email link, an email that contains a link that allows her to download that completed document at her leisure. So if she's going to leave on vacation, she might want to do that when she comes back. Certainly, it's up to her. So let's take a look at what this completed document looks like, as well as the audit trail. So if you had to prove compliance, we could we could do that. So if I click on the download button, the document is going to be handed back or available in a PDF format. So if I open this up in place, it's going to open this up in a zip file, and I can see the PDF document. So let me make this full screen so everybody can see it. And simply by opening this document, OneSpan Sign goes through a validation process. The document is cryptographically sealed to ensure that no changes are made to the document after it was signed. And I can see that in the upper left-hand side, and there's a little green check mark that indicates the document is still secure. This could be just minutes like we just experienced, or this could be months or even years later. I could open this document and all of this validation is included inside of the PDF that is downloadable. Now, if I continue to read the message at the top, it says the document was updated after signing. Open the signature panel to view the change history. That sounds like it's contradicting what I just said about making changes to the document. This is something that OneSpan does to a document to make sure it's very secure. So if I open up the signature panel, the best way to explain this is to actually show you what the revisions were. So when I click on revision 1, this is when Pat signed the document. A digital signature, which is a method to encrypt and protect the document. The digital signature was applied to the document when Pat signed it. The second revision, when I click on this, it circles what that revision was, and that is when Mary Ellen signed it. So this is something that OneSpan does that really tightens up our audit trail real tight. So each one of these digital certificates or digital signatures has some metadata behind it. So I could click on this and I could look at the properties. The properties includes, what is the date and time that Pat clicked on this to sign the document? What is the email address that he was using? What was his IP address? So all of this information is embedded inside of the document. Same thing if I looked at Mary Ellen's, you'll see that she has different information, a different IP address. She's in a different location than me. A lot of times if you get a dispute in insurance, people might come back and say, they're not going to contest, it wasn't me that signed the document. Well, if that's the case, then they were never insured to begin with. But typically it says that clause was not part of the application, or that was not part of the policy. So I could point out inside of here and say, well, I can see this box. There's a very important text that's inside of here. And if Mary Ellen came back and said that was not there when I signed the document, it must have been added afterwards. Is I could actually open up revision 2, and again, that's when Mary Ellen signed it, and I could look at the version of the document that was presented to her during the signing ceremony. So if I click on that, I can see now I have 2 tabs open. There's 2 versions of the document open in PDF Reader. If I scroll down to the very bottom of the document, I could see that, yes, that actually was there, that there is, the paragraph. So it was there when you signed it. It was, it was part of the document. So that is some good information. One last thing I want to point out here when I look at the properties is this thing that is called a transaction ID, because that is going to link us to the next document I'm about to open. So this transaction ID ends with the letters BE equals sign. So let me close this PDF. And sorry about this, I've got some Zoom information inside on top of my screen that I need to close. There we go. So if I click on the button right next to download, there is an audit trail, or we call it an evidence summary document. When I click on that, it downloads it. It's another PDF that is also cryptographically sealed. So this document cannot be modified as well. So this document contains all of the information about how the policy was produced. So the first thing I see is the transaction ID with the BE equal sign. So this is the document. Again, this is the one that links to the PDF we just viewed. And this has all kinds of good information about the name of the transaction, when it was created and completed, who is the sender, which documents were included. And as I scroll down, you're going to see a log of everything that happened to the transaction, and every single action has got a unique date and time stamp. So when Pat, the agent, was putting this together, I can see that he deleted the e-sign consent form before he even sent it out. And then we logged in. Mary Ellen joined the session. We created a session for her, and we both looked at the overview page. This is the one that was showing you the one document we needed to sign. As we scroll down, I started the signing ceremony, and we viewed the life insurance application. Then me as an agent, I clicked to sign it. And again, you can see the date and time associated with each one of these. When we got to the time to switch signers, then I can see that Mary Ellen viewed this document. So it's real nice. It gives me a difference. I can look to see how long she was sitting on that document before she clicked to sign and confirmed. So the audit trail again shows you step by step exactly what happened. If we had additional authentication inside of here for Mary Ellen, you would see that before she was allowed to log in. So if I challenged her with a SMS text PIN number, you would see the mobile number I sent it to, and I would see when she actually provided those credentials before she joined the signing ceremony. So it's a quite robust audit trail. Again, it's used for not just conflicts with your customers, but also for compliance. If you have auditors come in and they want to understand the process that you went through. So that is really all I wanted to show you today from a signing ceremony. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
Terrific. Thank you, Pat. That was excellent. So we just have really just one last slide to go through. Let me see if I can. Oh, sorry. Here we go.
While she's loading that screen, just to remind everybody that we do have questions and answers at the bottom. So if you have any questions that have come up so far, please feel free to start entering those in.
Yeah, and we're going to move to questions. So to bring it all to a close, because I know some people have been entering their questions. You know, we really look at this as a win-win for both insurers, you know, agents, broker dealers. Your customer gets the financial help that they're looking for through that interaction. And at the end of the day, you know, as a organization, you're really helping to innovate and give your sort of human-led channels an opportunity to really, you know, keep this process efficient, and at the same time, you know, adding that trust and value that, you know, you would want to do through that channel. So what we'll do is we'll move over to questions. You know, if I could finish off on just one last thing, you know, as an organization, we've been working in the insurance industry for more than 25 years. We've been helping carriers and broker dealers and banks really transform the way they do business with their customers. And, you know, we do that by securely digitizing the delivery and execution of contracts and agreements. So, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you're looking to innovate and to really elevate that level of engagement. So, Doug, maybe we step over to you and take some questions from the audience.
Super. Thank you very much, Mary Ellen and Patrick. We have some questions, and I would like to ask one. It's kind of a technical question, I guess. Patrick, I think you may have answered this already. And there was a question from Greg asking if the co-browsing that you're referring to, screen sharing and things like that. So any comment you want to add around that, or did you pretty much answer it, do you think?
Well, I'm hoping I answered it, but let's just kind of review. So it is a co-browsing. She can see, you know, we can see the same document. We can share the keyboard. So I can enable, you know, Mary Ellen to take control and sign her signature cues. I can sign on my own behalf. So it's a combination of video conferencing, screen sharing, and giving remote access to the keyboard. So it's really the three put together.
Super. And a question then for more for Mary Ellen, I think, from Aaron. Do you have any stats, completion times, rates, days to completion, et cetera, that would stem from using a tool like this to doing it on paper? Or I guess it's probably early days for this particular version with the authentication, et cetera, to compare this to the prior digital versions.
Yeah, no, good question. Definitely it's early days, and we've got a number of customers that are now just launching the virtual room. But I would say that, you know, if I look at adoption for electronic signatures in insurance, you know, we've seen, you know, probably on the online channel, it could be as high as 99%. Definitely in the agent channels, depending on captive or independent, we also can see as high as 95%. You know, what I would hope is that with the virtual room, what you're really doing is you should be able to maintain really high adoption rates. What it's really giving you is the ability, I think, to help that agent close the business in a single session, and to be able to do that in a virtual way where there's that human element. So we wouldn't expect that adoption would go down. Already adoption for digital and electronic signed transactions is just incredibly high.
Okay, another technical question then, I think, for Patrick. Instead of the time zone being GMT, can it be set up as a time zone where your office is, for example?
Yeah, definitely can. In fact, there's multiple ways you can set the time zone. You can have your account default to a specific time zone. You can also build templates. So if you are an agent and you've got the same document that you're going to send out of the same workflow, you can specify inside of the template which time zone that you'd want to have the transactions created in. So yeah, there's multiple ways you can do that, but absolutely, it's a very good question.
One kind of business question comes off the top, probably for Mary Ellen, I suppose. and it's around the whole insurtech industry. Or I guess what morphed or arrived as part of insurtech, and it's questioning the partnering, if you will, between insurtechs and the traditional carriers and brokers, agents, etc. Rather interesting evolution going on there. But do you have any comment that you'd like to make around that, Mary Ellen?
We see a good partnership happening at different carriers. I don't know at the broker dealer level right now, but definitely digital platforms are and technologies are really coming together. I mean, you know, we've done integrations with Guidewire, we've done integrations with Pega, integrations with, you know, Smart IQ and SmartCom. It's, you know, that's just on the larger level. As let's say startups happen and they look to incorporate technology, you know, they're kind of become our customer as well. Like a carrier is a customer, the insurtech becomes a customer because we're integrating directly into that platform. The benefit at the end is, you know, whether that's for a broker dealer or an end user or an insurance carrier, you're getting a fully integrated solution. So I only see value in where insurtech is going.
Okay, super. I guess I have some other questions that I would like to ask too. One of them comes back to Canada and the acceptance or adoption of e-signatures. And do you see any, Mary Ellen, probably comparison between P&C and versus life and investments? And I think you started off your presentation earlier with a little bit of some of that, but do you have any other comments specifically for Canada?
Yeah, I think we see we see life insurance is way ahead in Canada over the US. The US has struggled. They have about 95% of, you know, their products are sold by agents and, you know, heavily independent agents. So they've just struggled to really, I think, bring in the right solutions and the right change management. Whereas in Canada, I feel like almost every insurance carrier is using e-signatures, just about in life insurance in some way. Also because banks, you know, sell the investments and the security products, they've already adopted. Every large bank and many credit unions and lenders have adopted e-signatures in Canada, and they pass that on to their wealth management or securities groups. So it's almost the opposite on life. You know, Canada's highly adopted, US isn't. It seems to be a little bit the opposite when we come to property and casualty. In United States, that was the first line of business that adopted e-signatures. In Canada, it depends province to province and carrier to carrier whether they are going to incorporate e-signatures for, I would say, personal lines. But in the US, it's you know, you almost can't run a P&C insurance carrier in the US unless you've got e-signatures. You just won't survive. Efficiency-wise, adoption, it's just everybody's using it.
Wow. Well, I see that we're down to about 1.5 minutes in our session. So if you don't mind, I'd like to say thanks to both of you as speakers and to our audience for the questions they asked. Wish we had a little bit more time to carry on, but let me just wrap up the session then. That brings to an end our webinar today. Thank you both, Mary Ellen and Patrick, for sharing your insights into adding the human element to a digital process, making it more personal. An interesting example of technology in action, how technology tools, along with a big pinch of innovation, can maintain the human element, a part component of our insurance world. One that is certainly pretty dynamic these days, to say the least. On behalf of those attending, we appreciate your material and illustration. Thanks also to you and the audience for registering and attending. We will be sending a note in the next day or so with directions to see the recording should you like to view parts of it again or share with someone else. We do welcome your comments about today's webinar. A quick survey will show as you leave the webinar. Thank you for taking a moment to complete it. Now that we are 1.5 years into the COVID-19 pandemic, please continue to be part of the solution. Do what's needed to keep yourself and others safe and healthy. That includes today's webinar. Have a good afternoon, everyone.